The United Nations General Assembly passed an arms treaty yesterday. The arms treaty will regulate the transfer of weapons from one state to another. It was overwhelmingly passed by a very large margin. The treaty is now open for states to sign and will come into effect 90 days after 50 states have ratified the treaty. While the United States was very important in creating this treaty, many Americans are concerned that it will restrict their right to bear arms, so it may not be ratified by the United States Senate. Let's look at some vocabulary. General Assembly. The United Nations has many bodies, but one body includes all 193 member states, where each of those member states gets one vote, and that body is the General Assembly. That is the main body of the United Nations, where every state has a vote. Arms. Arms, two arms. No, not these arms. Arms here are weapons. Guns, grenades, tanks, anything that's a weapon, we consider it to be arms. So arms are weapons. A treaty. A treaty is you have two or more states, and those states come together and they sign an agreement. And that agreement is ratified. I'll talk about the word ratified later. But when those two or more states come to a formal agreement, we call that agreement a treaty between those states. Regulate. To regulate is the act of making rules and restrictions. Governments regulate many things that we do. Governments regulate business. That means government restricts what business can do. Government regulates arms in the United States. It passes rules about what weapons people can own and who can own them. So the government regulates. It has rules on things you can and can't do. Transfer. Transfer is you want to take something and you want to pass it. You want to give it to another person or another group. So the transfer of arms here is, say one state, say the United States, is giving weapons to Egypt, for example, because this is in the news. Okay? So the United States will transfer weapons, transfer arms to the government of Egypt. So that's transfer. You take something and you give it to another person or to another group. You transfer it. Overwhelmingly, as an adverb, or overwhelm as an adjective. Overwhelm means by a large amount. So if something passes overwhelmingly, that means it passed very easily. More than 150 states voted in favor of this treaty. Only a small handful, about 4 or 5, I don't remember the exact number, voted against it. So it passed overwhelmingly. Or you could win overwhelmingly if you are in a basketball game and you win by 25 points. You win overwhelmingly. Ratify. Okay. Ratify. Okay. With a treaty. Okay. For example, the President of the United States will sign a treaty for the United States. Okay, that's signing it. But then each government, each state has a process to formally accept the agreement. In the case of the United States Senate must ratify any treaty that is signed, meaning that the United States Senate must vote and pass it with a 2/3 vote. meaning 67 out of 100 senators must vote in favor of the treaty for the United States to ratify or formally accept the treaty. Bear arms. Bear arms is a verb phrase. And to bear arms, to bear anything, means to hold it, to possess it. Okay? So to bear arms is to own or possess a weapon like guns. In the United States, the Constitution guarantees the rights of Americans to bear arms. Okay? So to bear arms is to own, to possess, to carry weapons. In this case, we're talking about to carry guns. Let's practice. Governments, the pollution that comes from cars. Okay? Well, cars, we know cars produce pollution. Now, the government has an interest to limit the amount of pollution. So it sets rules. And those rules are different kinds of restrictions. So when we pass rules and restrictions, we regulate. Governments regulate the pollution. Number two, the U.S. has with South Korea to help it if the North attacks. Well, we talk about an agreement between two or more states. That's what we have here. We have an agreement between the United States and South Korea to protect it if the North invades. So that kind of an agreement is called a treaty. Number three, you may not this plane ticket to another person. Okay, so you have something. Now, in this case, you have a plane ticket. You may not take this plane ticket and give it to another person. So you give it to another person, you transfer. So you may not transfer this plane ticket. And number four, people are not allowed to, in Taiwan, like in the U.S. Well, one difference between Taiwan and the United States is in the United States, most people are allowed to carry guns. In Taiwan, this is not allowed. So to carry guns is to bear arms. In the United States, people are allowed to bear arms. Here in Taiwan, they are not. This has been an installment of News English. 如果你还有英文问题，你可以上 Facebook 台中新英格兰美语，也可以上 YouTube TCNE English。如果你在台中，你找英文老师，你可以上 FB 跟我联络。谢谢你收看。